Well, hello again from here inside St James's Park, and yeah guys, it's the calm after the storm. Wow, that really was something. My head is absolutely scrambled, and if these reflections are a little chaotic, well, at least it's true to the game. And where do I start with that? Well, as ever, you've got to probably start at the end. But saying that, I'm not going to, revise what I thought during the first hour, because I think there's a lot to pick through it. I think it's important that we do that, and I'll try to be true to what I felt at the time, because a lot of what I saw wasn't good. But the last half hour, or more so the last 33 minutes, were absolutely tremendous from a Newcastle perspective. And the reason I say 33 minutes plus stoppages is because on 57 minutes, Eddie Howe made the changes when he brought on Elliot Anderson and Lewis Hall. And for me today, this game was all about impact subs, and I've written this in my Mail on Sunday match report. 2 impact subs in particular, not Hall and Anderson, although we will come on to them because I thought they were brilliant. But the 2 impact subs I referenced were Harvey Barnes, the match winner, and Calvin Phillips for West Ham. Wow, Newcastle's recruitment this season hasn't been great. Seems a strange thing today on a day Harvey Barnes has just come from the bench and scored 2 goals, but I do think arguably the best decision they've made all year from a recruitment point of view was not signing Calvin Phillips in January. We got wind as we went through the month that Newcastle, and Eddie Howe in particular, were concerned about his lack of football, how long it would take for him to get up to speed. Well, 2 months on, he still isn't. He came on there today when West Ham were leading 3-1, and yes, the momentum had shifted in Newcastle's favour by that point. I'll come to why, and it comes back to those 2, Anderson and Hall again. But when Phillips comes on, the last half hour for him, it wasn't even that really. The last 20 odd minutes is a disaster. I'm not going to talk about West Ham players too much, but he gave away the penalty for 3-2. He's then not close enough to Alexander Isak in the middle of the park for 3-3, and it's Phillips, who is turned all too easily, as much as it's a brilliant turn, by Harvey Barnes for 4-3. So yeah, David Moyes made an impact sub, didn't impact quite how he'd hoped for, but nonetheless, that did help Newcastle in some ways, because there was that weakness at the heart of West Ham's midfield all of a sudden, when before that I thought West Ham were good. But to go back to the point I've been threatening to talk about for the last 2.5-3 minutes now, Lewis Hall and Elliot Anderson. Newcastle for the first 57 minutes, again, I've spoken a lot about the midfield, and Bruno Guimaraes at times there was playing in midfield on his own. Sean Longstaff stayed on, again, didn't have one of his better days, even though I thought, he got stronger, towards the end there. Every player played their part during that comeback. Joe Willock had another game whereby he's clearly must be carrying something still, or working his way back to his best, because another game where he just hasn't impacted like we know he can. Bruno's trying to do a lot of things on his own. West Ham's midfield is on top. Newcastle's midfield is struggling again. But then Anderson and Hall come on. And yes, Hall is from left back, but he steps into midfield on occasion. And for me, it's Elliot. We're going to talk about Harvey Barnes as well, but it's Elliot Anderson who I just think changed the entire mood of the game in many ways. His willingness and his want to get on the ball and drive Newcastle forward. And you sat there and you're writing your report and you're doing all of your work, and West Ham are leading 3-1, and everything then, guys, honestly, everything is committed to a West Ham victory. And this is a Newcastle inquest, and, serious questions to ask of certain elements of the game and the manager post-match. But when Anderson comes on and Phillips comes on, it becomes stretched, and you just think, there's a goal in this for Newcastle. And I understood, we've just spoken to David Moyes downstairs, I understood his rationale when he said he brought Phillips on, he wanted an extra midfielder on to try and shore things up, because even at that point, at 3-1, he thought Newcastle were on top and were creating chances, and they were. That was because of Anderson, that was because of Hall, that was because they changed the mentality of those around them. They weren't the only ones to play well. I thought Bruno was very good during the closing period. Anthony Gordon, we'll get to him and the impact he had. His performance was almost bookended, a very good start and a very good close, and not so great in between, but we'll come to that. They come on, and then it's the substitution of Barnes. Now, Barnes was enforced in many ways. Harvey Barnes perhaps doesn't come on if Miguel Almiron doesn't injure his knee, 10 minutes after coming on himself. Harvey Barnes comes on, and wow, what a stroke of fortune that was in many ways, just as it's unfortunate that whatever's just started up behind me there is probably interfering with the sound. So we'll wander on a little way down, but no, Harvey Barnes comes on, and I'm trying to make sense of all of this because, there was just so much to pick through. So it comes on at 3-1, of course he does. Newcastle then get the penalty when Calvin Phillips has got the the lazy leg, he swings. Now David Moyes has queried Newcastle's 2 penalties there, and he focused especially on the second one. It's a penalty, come on, Phillips doesn't get the ball, Gordon gets there in front of him, he takes his foot, and it's a penalty. Isak makes it 3-2. Isak then springs Barnes clear in the, what are we now, we're at the 83rd minute. Barnes is one-on-one with Fabianski. Is he lucky? Is it a brilliant finish? I don't know, who cares on reflection, but he keeps his cool, he puts it through the goalkeeper's legs. That is 3-3, and from that point on, it's rip up your match report time. Newcastle are going to win this. You really do have to change the tone and the match ratings and everything of what you thought was going to go before, and then just to revisit and talk about that moment and what I saw and what you guys would have felt in the stadium. It's quite incredible, really, but at the same time, it felt inevitable. It almost felt inevitable from the point of that penalty being awarded. Even when they're trailing 3-1, when the penalty's awarded with 30 minutes to go, you're thinking something special is about to unfold here. The fans hadn't turned, and was there reason for them to turn? I don't know. I'll let you guys decide on that. But I wouldn't have been surprised if the longer the game went on, if groans and murmurs of discontent had emerged, but nonetheless, to the point of the 77th minute, when it's still 3-1, there's no uprising against the manager or the players or anything. Thought the support was magnificent. On 1 or 2 occasions, there were breaks in play when you could actually hear a real roar among the home fans to get behind the team. So anyway, I get sidetracked. It's where are we now? It's 3-2, isn't it? Yeah, Isak scored his penalty. Barnes goes through for 3-3, and then Anthony Gordon now I've just touched on Gordon before, haven't I? This is taking us back to the start. He wins the penalty. He made a brilliant start of the game, really, really bright up against, I'd build it as Jared Bowen versus Anthony Gordon in terms of the England auditions. I thought both were very good, actually. But Gordon makes the great start, wins the penalty. Isak puts it away, and then at the like I say, in between that, I thought Gordon got into lots of positions of promise, but didn't really do enough with those positions, and that was almost symptomatic of Newcastle in the final third. Nonetheless, at the end there, it's 3-3 in the 90th minute. A ball is hoisted up, and Gordon hasn't stopped running all game. He's been fouled for 2 penalties. He's been here, there, and everywhere. He's got every right to be, for want of a better phrase, I can use this, I'm a Geordie. He had every right to be knackered at that stage, absolutely knackered. Somehow he finds the strength and the energy and the enthusiasm to go tussle, toe to toe with Kurt Zouma, and he's no pussycat. Anyway, and he gets the better of him, lays the ball off to Harvey Barnes. It's brilliant what Gordon does. Barnes is then faced with Phillips, and it's the touch to open his body. It's just so clever and so cute the way he does it to escape the man. I mean, you can argue his Phillips resistance is that, negligible. Maybe, perhaps the West Ham man could have done more. Nonetheless, Barnes gets his body open in that position, and he's then, he's done half the job, but arguably the hardest part of the job is still to be done, and that is somehow, over my shoulder there, from 20 yards, finding the bottom corner and the only patch of net that Lucas Fabianski cannot perhaps cover. And like I noted in my match report, the roof would have caved in on poor Calvin Phillips if Newcastle supporters hadn't already sent it into orbit on the moment of that goal. Eddie sprinted down the touchline there just in front of the press box, something I don't think he's ever done before. He was subsequently booked for the first time in his managerial career. He's just said to us downstairs, no problem, I'll take that. It felt good to be on the receiving end of a yellow card again. He was understandably in brilliant spirits, and rightly so and understandably so, because if that game hadn't have gone his way, and if that had stayed 3-1 or finished 3-2, would serious questions have been asked of Eddie? Well, no, not from me, not from I think anyone inside the stadium. Again, there's 2 different worlds there. He sat there in the press box. That's my seat just down there, and you're looking online, and it's strong. There's some pretty strong language being used there. But when you're in the ground, if social media didn't exist, you wouldn't think there was any issue with the manager whatsoever. That's not to say he didn't make mistakes today, and I'll come back to those in a second. It's not to say you wouldn't have picked apart some of what had gone before, but nonetheless, I think the overriding mood is one of support and understanding. Without it, you don't get the comeback, For all of this noise online, and there's some pretty nasty things and some pretty strong language used, I've already said, sit inside a stadium, and I think 52,000 people there are fully behind the manager and fully behind the players too. What had unfolded in the first hour or so, it wasn't good, and we're not going to ignore that. I think it's important we revisit it. So they get the brilliant start. I think they start well, and from that point on, I think, listen, West Ham's a good team. They've got good players. I said before the match, if you're making a composite 11 of the two, you perhaps have more West Ham players in there. It was no surprise when they started creating problems for Newcastle. In the moment, it changes when Newcastle lose Jamal Lascelles to the knee injury, and Eddie Howe makes the change by bringing on Emil Kraft, and it changes 4 players in the back 4, and I think on reflection, I don't think he would do that again, because it was just chaos. Really, really disrupted them. Emil Kraft is caught cold for the ball over the top for the equaliser. Mikel Antonio, good finish. A word on Dubravka here, we'll cover all 3 goals with this. He's stuck on his line. Nick Pope, I think, marks that space better. If you're going to play such a high line, you need a sweeper keeper. At the same time, if you're going to play such a high line, you need your midfield to press the ball. There was no pressure on Lucas Paqueta whatsoever for his pass over the top. Antonio goes through, he scores. That's Dubravka for the first goal. Dubravka for the second goal, I don't think he gets a strong enough arm on the shot by Kudus, even though it is from close range. Now on this, a lot of controversy around it. Fabian Schär gives away a free kick, stays on the floor. West Ham take it quickly. And Newcastle and you guys inside the stadium, you're aggrieved on half time. Personally, I don't have much sympathy with Newcastle for this one. It wasn't you might laugh at this, it wasn't a head injury, it was a face injury, and yes, while your face is part of your head, the different, it wasn't a concussion concern, it wasn't a head injury, it was a scratch down his face, and he was on the floor holding his face. It was a cosmetic injury, if you like. So I think for me, I had no problem with West Ham taking a free kick. Nonetheless, they've taken the free kick. Newcastle have still got 4 points. They can stop the free kick. Tino Livramento was caught sleeping to a degree for Jared Bowen getting behind him. You've then got the pullback. Joe Willock has lost Mohamed Kudus, and you've then got Dubravka's failure to keep it out with an arm that wasn't strong enough. So there you go. Now, I've got no problem with that. West Ham 2-1 up. Then early in the second half, and this is when it gets really calamitous for Newcastle from a defending point of view. It's Newcastle's own corner. Kudus, I thought, was tremendous. Breaks down the left, puts Bowen free in the middle, and again, Dubravka just stays in his goal mouth. He doesn't, for me, as a goalkeeper, he doesn't do enough to impact goals. You'd never walk away saying that was his mistake or that was his fault, but does he do enough to to impact the situation? Again, there for me, he didn't do. So it's 3-1 and the chips are down, and you're looking at the body language of some, and Sean Longstaff misses a chance at 3-1 where he stabs it wide, and that just captures his lack of confidence. Right now, Joe Willock again, is drifting through another game. Fabian Schär's having a really difficult afternoon. Dan Burn too, switched to the centre. I actually thought he started well up against Bowen at left back. He doesn't benefit from going into the middle of the park, even though he made a couple of big interventions later on. Tino Livramento is injured after not having his best game. Gordon again, Gordon after the brilliant start, for me, end product wise, had really gone off the boil, and then it all changes. Anderson and Hall come on. There's just a change in mood, a change in shape of the game. Phillips comes on, that was helpful too. Then they get the second, then they get the third, and then they get the fourth. And yeah, it was just such a significant win on so many levels in the context of this season. Beating a close rival, in terms of it. Newcastle lose to West Ham today. I think it's very difficult for Newcastle to finish above West Ham, and just changing that mood. Now I've mentioned the injuries there. Lascelles knee, Livramento ankle, Almiron knee. Looks like none of those 3 will be available for Tuesday against Everton. One player definitely won't be available, and I've lost this and make all of my reflections. Anthony Gordon, he was sent off in injury time with 2 yellow cards. I thought the second one was a little soft in terms of how far he actually kicked the ball away, but for time wasting. But anyway, he's missing on Tuesday. But you just think that there'll be enough feel good and enough momentum washing over from what we've seen here today to carry into Tuesday that it might not matter if those bodies are missing. I really think, under the lights here, I just think the place could be rocking, and Everton have lost today. They're not in a great place right now, and I fully expect to be reflecting on 6 points out of 6 come Tuesday night. Now that takes us on to my merit stars eventually. Thank you for hanging around, guys, if you have got this far. And in ascending order, I'm going to give 2 1-stars, and the 2 1-stars go to players I've already spoken about. Elliot Anderson, for all the reasons discussed. I just thought when he came on, he does something different to other players. He's got the confidence to get on the ball. You know, he always seems to have time. He's always positive. I like him. I've always liked him as a player. I love him as a player. I thought he was brilliant pre-season. What a shame he's had the injury impacted year that he has done. Elliot Anderson gets a 1-star along with Anthony Gordon. 2 assists. He's won two penalties. And he's then got the third and, you know, the most telling assist for Harvey Barnes as winner at the end there. Never stopped, even though he's got the red card. You know, Anthony Gordon, he gets 1 star. 2 stars, well, these go to Alexander Isak. And how can they not really? Before Barnes did what he did, I had Isak as my best Newcastle performer. It was telling that today. I thought, I don't know if you guys noticed, but he kept on dropping deeper. I know he played an attacking midfield role for Sweden during the week, but he kept on coming deep, getting the ball. It's his brilliant pass. He's taken the 2 penalties coolly, but I thought his best contribution was arguably, you know, coming off into that midfield role at 3-2 down and supplying the pass to send Harvey Barnes clear for 3-3. I thought Isak was his most lively today. You know, that's the best he's been consistently over 90 minutes for a long time. And the 3 stars, well, how can they not? They've got to go to Harvey Barnes. And I've spoken before about the signing of Barnes, and I said this actually, we were sat pre-match talking amongst ourselves, and I said, in isolation, I like the signing of Harvey Barnes. When I was banned by Steve Bruce up here for whatever reason, I was sent to Leicester to cover them. It was during the period when Barnes was playing very well. I've always thought he's a really good player. Surprised he hasn't got more recognition internationally. So when Newcastle signed him at £38 million, I thought in the context of itself it was a good signing. What I didn't agree with was the fact that Newcastle's best player, the player I thought was going to have a tremendous year, Anthony Gordon, played in exactly the same position, and they had for me a glaring weakness on the other flank. That money could have been better used elsewhere. Nonetheless, that's taken nothing away from Barnes, and what has happened with him is unfortunate. You know, in terms of the injuries, if you watch these videos regular, I've never criticised or questioned Barnes himself as a player. It was more so the logic behind what it meant they couldn't sign elsewhere. The injuries on the back of that have been unlucky, but then he comes on there today and he is a goal scorer. His numbers are fantastic. You know, if he'd have been fit all season, Anthony Gordon's got 10 goals. I think Harvey Barnes would have probably added 5 to that and got 15 himself if they'd somehow found a way to get them both in the team. I don't know, but the point I make is he is a quality player, he is a good player, and that there today is the reason Newcastle wanted to sign him. And you do just wonder what impact he could have had if fit over the course of a whole season. And you hope now, while they've lost more bodies and, you know, the injury situation continues to get worse, not better, someone like Barnes could have, wow, a hell of an impact between now and the end of the year. Well guys, that brings me to the end of my reflections. I don't know if I got everything in, I really don't. You know, for the purpose of that, I'll put the link in the description of my match report before, please. I don't even know if I've got everything in there, to be honest with you. Like I say, I had a little bit scrambled after that, but it was great fun. It was a brilliant game to cover. You know, I thought both teams had flaws, really, you know, for all they were wonderful in parts, and there's some great individual performances. You know, 2 sides who perhaps are 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th in the Premier League, you know, on current form this season. So yeah, but nonetheless, crazy, crackers, bonkers, whatever you want to call it, it was brilliant, and I hope you've enjoyed this video too. So we'll just have one last little scan of the patch of green where the madness unfolded. Please hit like, comment and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you again on Tuesday night after Everton back here, which again promises to be another brilliant occasion. Okay guys, take care. Bye bye.